This is now my third attempt to record this video because every time I start, I find myself to be saying things that could inadvertently benefit one side over the other in this, and I really don't want that to happen. Let me, before going into all of this, to my fellow YouTubers who are speaking about this situation, I highly encourage you, and I will link the video down below, to go watch Lawful Masses with Leonard is his YouTube channel. And he put out a video about 5 hours ago called Rico Suits and Restraining Orders. The bricks and minifigs chaos just got worse. And if you haven't watched his other video on this particular matter, I strongly encourage you to go watch that too. I will reiterate very clearly, you likely will not see larger legal platforms speaking about this issue because it has been reported and potentially alleged that some of these larger content creator platforms may be trying to assist certain people in this situation, and for that reason they likely will not be able to speak on it. I am not going to say which channels those are. Other people have commented on at least one that I know of, but there may be others. However, it is important, especially when you are making content, speaking about issues involving legal matters, which, whether it's criminal or civil, it is a legal matter. It is important to listen to people in the field because they can provide you with information and how not everything that is perceived by the public is going to be perceived the same way by a court of law. So I highly and strongly encourage everybody to go watch his assessment on filings and things of that nature and information that is being presented, because he is very informative. I have often said in my life, I am vastly more informed when it comes to criminal proceedings than I am civil. And today, thanks to Lawful Masses with Leonard, I learned that there is a civil version of Rico. Whenever we hear Rico, typically we think of like mob bosses being brought up on Rico charges by the federal government and stuff of that nature. I did not know that there was a lawsuit version of this until today. And I will forewarn a lot of people that there are aspects now to a lawsuit filing that leaves room for other people being dragged into the lawsuit. So my verbiage and my wording is going to be even more filtered in this than usual, because now I'm not just dealing with YouTube algorithm. No, now I'm dealing with the knowledge and the realization that any electronic format that may be speaking on or used to communicate about this case, especially when it comes to being with people involved in this case, may now come under scrutiny. So to my fellow YouTubers, please inform yourself and watch his videos, and then maybe contemplate going back through your content and think about maybe re-editing things. Especially if you don't want to find yourself on the other side of a courtroom. Because what you say and how you say them have just become that much more important. That said, I have my own lived experience that when people want to silence you, or people in general seek to try to squash something that may not necessarily make them look good, it is in that silence that they generally win, and I know this from my own lived experience. I have been silenced most of my life with my own lived experience. It's only been in recent months that I've been more open about speaking about them, granted, in filtered language. But, you know, I am of the mentality that in instances where someone may be perpetuating great harm upon somebody else, that shouldn't be left to slide. It shouldn't. And as much as I feel for the other franchise owners who may have franchises affiliated with this corporation, the things I see coming down the line, and I'm not going to comment on what I see coming publicly because I'm not adding fuel to the fire. Like I said, I have to be careful because I don't want to help one side over another. I call on those franchise owners to do their best to legally protect themselves as much as possible. That's all I'm going to say. Legally and financially protect themselves as much as possible. The perceivable actions that we have seen I can't even say what I wanted to say on that. Sorry, ever since watching his video, I'm like scrutinizing everything I want to say and putting it through a lens in my mind before it leaves my mouth of, will this hurt or help one side over another? And if I fear that something that I say is going to do that, I'm having to hold it back. Not because I want to, but because I don't want even more harm to befall, potential harm to befall one group, because this is ongoing litigation. In the future, I will happily rip that Band-Aid off and I will sing like a canary. I promise. You will see that side of me. But knowing that when it comes to these cases, there are people on legal teams who are going to be scouring the internet looking for any way that they can build a case against one side over another and look for anybody's perceptions on how that can be accomplished and how any words that you may say can be weaponized against another party. I find myself being more cautious right now. All I am going to say is that the Lego fandom and the Star Wars fandom are massive entities. I am a nerd myself. I have played tabletop games, Dungeons and Dragons, Shadowrun. I even ran a Star Wars tabletop game. So I'm very familiar with the large majority of people who make up the fandom. And in many ways, a lot of us have very similar lived experiences of being black sheep, of being the outcasts of society. So one could, in this potential case, put themselves in the shoes of someone who is alleged to maybe a harmed party and rally against anyone they perceive to have done the harming because of that. I am not encouraging that behavior. I am not encouraging people to go on the attack. I am not encouraging harassment. I genuinely encourage people not to, because as of right now, I promise you, anything that you do is going to help one side over the other, because you will be building someone's case. In moments like this, it is better to keep your support to other ways. Remember, GoFundMes you can donate anonymously. Remember, you can send letters of support and keep that support anonymous. You can't necessarily do something like that digitally. Because there's only so far that protective aspects that you can utilize will protect you. And based on the information that I came across in the video I watched before making this, I strongly advise against doing a rallying cry, because the last thing any of us want to do is cause further harm to any side that we perceive to have been harmed by the other, which can happen. All right? Support, but be cautious about it. You know, I will say, as someone who follows a lot of content creators who independently speak about people who have left certain religions and religious groups in territories where those religions make up the dominating population, can I see how it's possible that the information we have been presented regarding certain civic duty members can I see how some of that could have been accurate? Yes. Again, nobody whose content I've watched about people who have left these groups or these territories have commented about this particular situation that I've seen thus far. But I will tell you that many of them have stated very carefully that they had to leave under cover of night and with certain protections in place, because they feared that had certain public civil duty members found them, that they would have been returned to situations they perceived to have been harmful, because those civic duty personnel largely have been alleged to support and protect situations in which people have been being harmed. I've seen content like that. I've heard people recount their own personal stories of that. So could I see that that could be a contributing factor in this case? Possibly. Yes. I watch a lot of content where people are leaving cults or that expose cults of wide varieties, that even people in the pagan and spiritual community, New Age community. There's one in particular who popped in my head who I have a lot of criticism for. So I watch content like that in general because it helps me in my own lived situation a lot of the time to overcome a lot of the things that I have been indoctrinated with. And some of the larger ones that are spoken about in recent years, like in Keep Sweet, Pray and Obey, remember, are offshoots of a larger religious organization that has a large population in the areas in which certain events are alleged to have transpired. You can look this up yourself. I had a bad feeling when I saw where the alleged employee from the company was from. I had a bad feeling. That's all I'm going to say on that. I am very sorry to be so vague and cautious in my language. I'm not usually like this. But once you see the video that I just watched, I think you'll understand why. And I highly encourage other people to watch the videos that this particular content creator is putting out again, and just be careful. Remember, something that I learned recently is, if at any point you have say, for an example, sent yourself an email from a work email address, and that employer comes under a lawsuit or investigation of some kind because you sent electronic correspondence from yourself to your personal email, that can now make your personal email subject to probing. Do with that information and interpret that information as you will. Okay? So I'm going to leave this here. I'm sorry I haven't been as expressive as I had planned to be. But yes, the video in question, which I am referring to, has called me to caution, and it should you too. Alright? So with all of that said, good night.